But so you can see everything that you see in front of you. This is actually the stone. So this is crushed concrete that was processed into that 21 AA. And so everything you see in those piles of stone, that's all the stone that we have that we've placed. So this whole area is basically at grade. So all the stakes you see, that's how they measure, and they're like making sure we put it in there.
Right.
The first phase of demolition that we're focused on is the first 65 acres. So the whole property, as most people know, is about 275. The first chunk we're focused on is 65 acres. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that 65 acres that we're doing. This first part of the work is plus or minus, because some things are running over budget because there's so much stuff in the ground, but our budget was about $20 million to start this first part, and that's what we're doing. And then just on the money side, we're using all the state, local, and county grants to do this first part. So we haven't really activated that TIF. We will, but we haven't used that yet. Right now we're still just working through our federal grants. That is kind of the first part of this project. So we've started demolition basically, June 1st-ish, right after Memorial Day, and this is what we've done so far. So the numbers you can ignore, that's just for us for tracking. But so we have, this road down the middle is about halfway, it's Division Street. We have removed the slabs in all of these areas. And then this blue line is the dividing line between, we bid the work out in two different parts. The part that's getting funded from Genesee County's ARPA grant required the public bidding. That's the part that we did the public bid on when you went to. That's basically what we call phase one. It's everything on south of the blue line. Everything north of the blue line was the second bid package that came out a month later that was a private bid. And what I mean by that is just like we didn't have to do the whole big process, but we bid it to all the same people and evaluated it. The contractor that won the first bid for the county funded work was Iafredi Construction. They were also the low bidder for this, and I think they, obviously once you won this, they could have lower mobilization costs. It gave them some advantages. So they also won the whole thing, which is honestly more convenient for us because it's a lot easier to work with one person than multiple different people. This north phase, what we call phase two, that has to do with the sewer that we've talked about before.
Alpha 3.
Yeah, so there is a large 60-inch public sewer that is over 100 years old and made out of clay tiles, and it runs basically where you see the blue line approximately. And what we're doing is that sewer is in such bad condition that there's groundwater getting into it, and if we touch it, it basically just starts to crumble and fall apart. And so for us to do our new development, that's not going to work for us because we have to, obviously, connect to it with our new buildings and stuff. And then this sewer is a public sewer because it runs through the property, but it actually services the neighborhood that's to the,
Right.
I guess
it runs all the way across the
west.
city.
Yeah, it runs and it drains kind of the whole neighborhood that's sort of like at industrial, like the west side of industrial, not the whole city, but
Right.
It's connected. And then it goes to the river. So what we're doing is, and we got as we are building our funding package together to do this work, it's a combination of a lot of different things. We've got different grants. We've got the brownfield plan that we haven't really used yet. We also keep applying for more grants because any additional money that we get helps alleviate the tax burden on the brownfield plan. And so one of the things that we did was we got a $5.9 million grant, and that was specifically to help with the work around the sewer. So what we're doing is we're building a new sewer kind of next to it, and we're also straightening it out because it kind of goes across the property on a 45-degree angle, which would end up under a building, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're building the new sewer kind of like along it, and it's going to kind of come like this, so we'll be more straight. And that work is why you see all the slab removal here, because they're basically removing the path of the sewer where it's going to go. We're about 40% done on slab removal. The slabs they get crushed on site. We have an on-site crusher. We process that concrete and then we turn it into basically two piles. This is our subgrade removals. So after we remove the slabs, then we have to start going after foundations and utilities. And so what you see on this map, these are all the utilities that we know about that GM left in the ground. They're not almost all of these are not connected to anything. They're all abandoned, but they're in the way, and some of them are fairly large. So we can't build on that because then what if it collapses? You could have like a void, which would obviously be a problem for settlement. So there's also a lot of old foundations of the buildings. So this blue area is just showing we have basically dug down to like native ground and removed everything you see in this blue box. So you can see we've got maybe 40% of the slabs gone, but only 22% of the actual subgrade stuff. And this is where the real meat and potatoes is, because I mean, we're literally finding, like, underneath the building you can see, we find another building that, you know, GM built on top of when they built whatever the last building they built was. So this is just like random stuff that we found where there wasn't a building, and we were digging to try to get clearance for the sewer. As we're digging for the sewer line, they found an area that just had, I don't know, lack of a better word, trash, but it's old engine blocks and just random stuff like that that, you know, GM just threw in the ground.
Oh, engine blocks? Yeah. Hey, you know what? What y'all do with those?
Well, right now I told them to put it in a pile, and then we have to, like, test it to see if it's contaminated. And then if it isn't, we probably take it to the landfill. Yeah, this looks to me like it's mostly railroad ties.
Right, because it's over by the railroad tracks.
Yeah, so probably they dug up. You know, you got to remember the history here goes back 150 years, and actually where we're standing, I believe, used to be a foundry. And so, you know, at some point, you know, they had to move the railroad, and they probably just like dug a hole and buried it all, and then moved on. This is by far the most time-consuming work. We are finding, you know, even more things than you would think. Huge, very thick concrete. You know, rebar this wide. I mean, it's a pain. We're finding oil inside some things, and we have to then suck out and clean the oil. And it's a, you know, it's a long process to, you know, treat all the water and suck out all the oil, and then we recycle the oil or dispose of it depending on what the test results show. I'm very familiar with all the drawings. This was not on any drawings. So this is outside of the building, and there was just something here. I don't know what it was. But look at, you can see how thick the concrete is.
Right.
Look how big this is. So we got to demolish all of this and get rid of it.
So this is like a tunnel, some type of tunnel? Or,
honestly, my guess is it was probably a process vault of some kind.
Right.
Something like that, I don't know. But yeah, and you can see there, like, you can see some concrete sticking out of there.
Right.
And then this is a braking machine. So it uses like hydraulic force to like basically try to, you know, punch through the concrete. And like, look at we got steel beams we got to rip out.
Right.
And so all the steel ends up getting like recycled. The concrete we turn into more stuff. But you can see it's all junk. And we got to clear all this stuff out.
Pipes and everything sticking out.
As part of the plan that we did get approved by Eagle, the state agency that they reviewed, we do have dust monitoring and dust suppression, right? So the idea is we don't want any potential contaminants from the property leaving the property and hurting anybody. So as we're doing the work, we have water trucks that drive around and keep everything wet so that it doesn't, you know, create a lot of dust. We haven't heard any complaints, and we don't believe we have both like analytical standards and visual standards. And what I mean by that is, like, we agreed in our plan that we would have no visible dust leaving the property. So we have people looking for that and making sure that's not happening. Now the site is so big, it's not that hard to do, especially with water trucks. But what we also do is anytime we're working in a sensitive area, which are generally these areas that you see, you know, with the different, you know, contamination zones, all of those areas, we have air monitoring that we set up. We do, some of the areas require even more. We have to put air pumps on people and just document their exposure. There's a few smaller areas where they actually have to use respirators to work in those areas. And then we put air monitoring stations where they're taking air samples downwind of the work area and at the property boundary. And we have all that data. And all of that gets compiled, and we'll report all that back to the state when we're done. But I can tell you that we haven't had there's been no exceedances of any kind, which is not that surprising because, I mean, like, the stuff that we're doing, and because we're watering everything, I mean, it's just, and then you get into the groundwater table, right? And then we have to treat the water. Everything's pretty wet. So, I mean, it works on that. It's problematic for us for other reasons just because of efficiency. But on the dust side, it's in good control. So our goal is to try to get at least this half done by the end of the year, and then the sewer, and we'll be installing the sewer. And then I don't know if we'll have that done by the end of the year, but that's the hope. And so this is our planned development of the entire property. So the area that we were just looking at is basically this piece here, right? So these two buildings would sort of be good to go. So when we did the brownfield plan, it covered all the land that we were looking at developing, and this parking lot right here was in the brownfield plan. That looks like something that probably came out of the ground, but I don't know what it is.
Is it a 450? They used to make the savers here.
Okay. Well, honestly, anything that's buried is probably from the 60s or 50s or something. So
that's why I want to see.
Yeah.